Welcome back to the gallery. Yesterday, I met up with some friends. Hadn't seen them for a while, and as tends to be the case, we got into a wonderful, long, flowing conversation. And we were reflecting a little bit on some of the crazy, for want of a better word, perhaps one should say stupid things that we did when we were younger, and how it's all turned out rather well, as it happens. And at a certain point in the conversation, we're talking about these sort of wild, rebellious days of youth, and I did my fair share of stupid things, it has to be said. Actually, if I'm being really honest, it's a very long list. And it's quite remarkable that things have turned out as they have. And I sort of made the point along those lines that, if you kind of imagined me and, in a group of 10 of us, similar sorts of backgrounds, lives and so forth, perhaps it would have been actually very difficult to predict, the one or two of us where things have worked out really, really well, which ones would just end up being in a sort of predictable middle crowd, and the one or two for whom the wheels came off spectacularly and in some cases tragically. It would have been difficult to predict that. And I mentioned that I'm often struck by the thought, when I think about people that I know where things really have gone horribly, horribly wrong, that could so easily have been me. And I can think of very specific cases. And my friend said that, no, he's never struck by that thought. That actually, essentially what he was arguing is that it couldn't have been me. I was meant to be this person for whom life worked out well. It was, on some level of thinking, written in the stars. And, my argument is on an equal sort of footing that it's just blind luck. And I got to thinking about this when I came home, sitting quietly on my own. And it struck me that there is implicit in what he was saying. There's a reason why we like to think like that. That things have worked out for the best for a reason. Because if we take it one step further, the reason might be something that we did. It's kind of not just comforting and reassuring, but it's a rationalization. It puts us on not on a pedestal, but shows us in a better light. The reason my life has worked out really, really well is because I deserve that through my own actions. And the reason that someone else's life has gone horribly wrong is that, they made some bad choices. And some people would argue, well, it's part of, if you have a reincarnation type of worldview, well, it's part of their spiritual journey. Things haven't worked out because they need to learn those bitter lessons, and things worked out well for me because of my elevated status, or things worked out well for me because I am naturally endowed with intelligence, be it intellectual or emotional, gifts, be they, genetic or things that I have carefully constructed through my own actions. It's a validation. It's a rationalization and a stamp of approval of who I am. And it also allows me to, in some sense, sit in judgment of the people for whom things didn't work out well. It didn't work out well for them because it was their own fault. It was something they did. I can tell stories about it. And I certainly have done at school that, you make some bad decisions and these are potentially the consequences. But I made those bad decisions. That's the truth of the matter. And let me just illustrate it with one story that I think I can safely tell. I was coming back from university once. I didn't drive, so I had a lift with some friends. We'd finished exams. I think it was the mid-year exams, all of us, and we were in our residence pub, and the drink flowed and late into the early hours of the morning, and we got some sleep and eventually woke up bleary-eyed, sort of shoveled ourselves into the car somehow, and off we went. And when we were very close to home, the sort of roads, main road leading into Port Elizabeth, main highway I should say, our driver essentially nodded off. He was tired, hungover. And the car sort of drifted into the central reservation where it kind of hit some gravel. And that was enough to kind of startle him into action. And in his bleary-eyed state, he sort of pulled back hard onto the highway, and in so doing, blew a tyre. We went flying off the road. He hadn't been driving slowly, so we went flying off the road at 140 kilometers an hour. Flew airborne off over a ditch, eventually ploughing into some bush. And none of us were hurt. And the car was absolutely totaled. I mean, the side which took the impact was dented in a good foot or so. And I remember climbing out of the back window. The windscreen had been thrown tens of meters down the road. It was a miracle that none of us were seriously hurt, or died. And for that matter, when eventually help was at hand and stopped, someone said what had happened, and we said, well, we were in this crash. He said, you were in that crash? No way. The people that are in that crash are still in that crash, and they're almost certainly dead. You witnessed this? I said, no. Look, we were in this crash. And it was that sort of miracle. But the fact that I'm here to tell that story, I suppose it would be 32 years ago. The fact that I'm alive is through no action of me or the driver or anything else. The only good decision that had been made is that we were driving an old car that had a very solid frame, and we didn't get crumpled up into a little ball. It sort of got compressed like a concertina, but there was space that I suppose, in a sense, saved us. And I say all of that because, it seems to me obvious. If someone tried to suggest that wasn't anything other than blind luck, it's madness. It was blind luck. Now, you might start arguing that there is some great cosmic plan that the universe was providing for me, or if you're of a religious persuasion, you might trot out the classic "there but for the grace of God," and suggest that, at that point you would undergo a deep reflection and praise the Lord and say, you've spared me for a reason, and lead a better life. If only that were true. I carried on doing remarkably stupid things for well over a decade, and continued to be blessed with really good fortune. But that's all it was, and I'm pretty convinced of that. The good fortune that I'm talking about, and the incidents that I could trot out but won't, for reasons of time and legal prudence, those incidents, frankly, it was just luck. That's all it was. And I'm not saying any of this for any other reason. When I reflect on that, I think, well, I have been blessed by an enormous number of moments of good fortune, and I think we all have. And at that point, the only sensible response is gratitude, and at least as far as is possible, to try and, not repeat them. But I do have a feeling in this sort of conversation that I had with my friend yesterday, that his reluctance to accept that it could have been him, and he was quite adamant about this, it couldn't have been me. This is because we want to, I suppose, avoid uncomfortable conversations and reflections. And this is not about blame pointing. None of these things happened because it was my parents' fault or anybody's fault. It was how my life kind of played out. There are reasons why I did them. Some of the stupid decisions I made were because of the influence of other people. But ultimately they were my decisions, and the way it all turned out had something to do with what I was doing and much to do with good fortune. I think once in a while, it's a good idea to reflect on that, say thank you very much, and I suppose try and do better the next time, and make the most with the one thing that we're certain of, the here and now, what I'm going to do later today. I do believe it's not going to be making a string of foolish decisions. I hope it's going to be using my time in a worthwhile sort of way, and acting in a way that reflects enormous gratitude for so many things that I have in my life. So that's it for today. Make of it what you will. Feel free to comment in the section below. And if you're one of those, by some miraculous reason, one of the other people in the car on that trip back to Port Elizabeth from UCT all those years ago, it'd be lovely to hear from you. And I hope your life has turned out as well as mine. So until the next time, from sunny Brazil, trust your lives are filled with joy.